Hello there, from Sherry Forsyth, life coach and peak performance coach. I welcome you to the second in the series of talks from this book, The 5 Things We Cannot Change, and how embracing them can really ease our life a lot, take a lot of the anxiety out of it. And really, our lives are so busy and so frenetic anyway that my opinion is, if anything can help, let's try and use it. So David Richo, he says that if we can embrace these 5 givens, as he calls them, if we can embrace them and say yes to them and really apply them in our lives, then what that will do for us is it will enable us to embrace adulthood and act more responsibly, more as an adult than as a child. So if we have a look at that issue, let's move on to, let's dive straight in actually to the second of the givens. And the second given is that things don't always go according to plan. And boy, oh boy, I'm sure we all know about that. And I'm sure many of us have got stories of our own to show how they really don't go according to plan. So I'm going to start with a story of a lady called Doris van Kappelhof. And when she was in high school, she had a terrible car accident that damaged her legs quite a lot. And her plan was to become a dancer in Hollywood. So her plan patently now wouldn't work very well. So while she was recuperating and getting over her disappointment that she couldn't become a dancer in Hollywood, she just started singing with a local, as a backup to a band. Well, eventually she became the lead singer of the band, and she became known to us as Doris Day. I don't need to say any more about how famous she became. So quite often when things don't go according to plan, it can result in a positive thing. It can result in something that we never expected. It can result actually in something better than we had planned. And I think that's the message that I want to give today, is that we think that we know it all. We think we've got it all under control. We think we know what is the best for us. But actually there's a much bigger picture. And if we can relinquish the control, very often what happens is much, much better than we ever could have planned ourselves. However, what does usually happen when we plan something and it doesn't come to pass? Well, I know of a number of people, adults I might add, not children, who when they plan something and it doesn't work out, they act like the proverbial spoilt brat child. They scream, shout, carry on, get angry. They are very, very frustrated and irritated that what they wanted, they didn't get. So it's just like the child in the supermarket who doesn't get that particular toy and the parents say no, because they in fact know that it's not going to be good to give their child everything that they want, because life isn't like that. And so the parent teaches the child that even though it was in his plan to get the toy, it's not in his best interests. And so that's the second point I want to make, is that very often when plans don't work out, frustrated as we are, often the thing that we had planned wasn't in our best interests at all. Okay, so then very often when our plans don't work out, as I say, we act out. There are a lot of the negative emotions. The list is endless of emotions that we can experience because our plans aren't working out. I mean, how dare life not listen to me? So we can go into a lot of anger, resentment, irritation, anxiety is a big one, fear. And a lot of those negative emotions, in fact, they add to our suffering instead of taking it away. So what do we need to do? What do we need to do when things don't go our way that puts us into an okay place? And one of the first things is we need to embrace humility. In other words, we don't always know. We don't always know what's best for us. Our plans maybe aren't in the best interests of us or others. And we have to have the humility to embrace the fact that maybe we don't know. The second value that we need to embrace is acceptance, which sounds so easy, but is so difficult. We need to take an attitude of accepting that life is unpredictable. It's not going to go our way all the time. Acceptance means going with the flow, learning to not try and be so terribly in control of everything that's happening, but to leave some things to chance. And that brings me to the third value, which is we've got to trust. Okay, trust in life, trust in the process of life, trust that it knows more than we do. And by trusting, we make a space for something new to come in. Instead of us very trying to control everything, every aspect of our life, and feeling that we're failing, when we sit back and relax and trust, it leaves an open space for new things to come into that wouldn't be there if we were trying to control. So I hope this all makes sense to you. There's one very helpful diagram that I use a lot in coaching, which helps with people who are anxious, people who don't know what they can control and what they can't control. And essentially linked to this idea of David Richo's that life doesn't always go according to plan, is that we need to embrace an attitude of only being able to affect those things that we can and letting go of those things that we cannot control. Many of us find that we are worrying and anxious about things that we can't control anyway. So the more we worry about it, the more counterproductive it's going to be. So I just want to quickly draw this picture, this diagram to you, which I hope you can see. So there are two concentric circles. The internal one is called the circle of, hang on, the out one is circle of concern. And the inner one is circle of influence. Okay, so this is the circle of concern, the outer one, and the inner one is the circle of influence, which means that inner circle means that you can do something to change the outcome. So instead of worrying about it and being anxious about it, do it. Do whatever needs to be done, even if it is quite a fearful thing to do. So if it is in the small circle, it means I can affect the outcome and therefore I can be proactive and I can do something. If it is in the outer circle, in other words, the circle of concern, it means that it's an event that I'm concerned about, but I can't do anything about to change the situation. So the example I'd like to use is my husband and I are driving down to Durban, and there was a massive accident in front of us. Both of us had meetings planned, and normally my husband is very anxious. So he was starting to get all jittery because we were going to be late for our meetings. And much as I don't ever presume to coach my husband, I did teach him this one and only tool of Stephen Covey's 2 circles. And I showed him that the circle of an accident on the highway with massive blockages and traffic was a circle that we couldn't do anything about. And so we phoned our respective people and said we would be late due to the traffic on the highway. And for many months after that, Mark couldn't even tell whether the incident was in the big circle or the little circle. So much, I mean, he was so anxious about life in general. So it has been a huge, huge thing for him to be able to embrace the 2 circles of Stephen Covey. Initially, he would then start saying, well, is it big circle, little circle? Then he would know it was the big circle. He just has to let it go. And that letting go is what leads to the acceptance. It leads to less anxiety in our days. So that's really why I am talking about this book by David Richo, because it helps us ease into life's everyday occurrences. So the second of the 5 givens that David Richo talks about is that things don't always go according to plan. And don't we know that? The first one, if you remember, was that everything changes and ends. So my challenge to you is to try and embrace those 2 things in this coming week, as and when they happen. And should you have any stories you'd like to share with me, I'm always very happy for you to pop an email to me on Sherry Forsyth, CherryForsyth @gmail.com, or you can go onto my website and leave me a message there, which is www.sherryforsythcoaching.com. And I wish you well as you embrace these 2 givens that will help you to live your life in an easier way. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.